somewhat of a more serious video now. So, September last year, I left my employment for a different job. And I thought about making this video then, but actually I decided against it in the end. Because I didn't want to be as pathetic and petty as the company that I worked for. However, that has now changed. So I am going to make this video. Now, I'm not going to name the company. I will tell you that it is a car buying service. So I will leave it to your imagination as to what it could possibly be. What I'm going to do is go through the things that basically, well, the many things of one, why I left, and two, why it's an awful, awful company. From how it treats its workers to what they're made to do, and how customers. Now, obviously, things could have changed. I left in September, so it's not quite a year ago, but it's coming up to a year ago. But anyway, because it's August now, following year. Well, obviously, so I left in September. Anyway, so let us begin. So I started fine. It was sort of just before COVID, so obviously there was that too. But anyway, I started. They gave you got uniform, you got trousers which were all right, but they weren't waterproof, and you do spend a lot of time outside. A fleece which was all right, polo shirt which was all right, and a jacket that was relatively okay. It was fairly waterproof and had a hood. Now, at some point during my time there, I can't really tell you how far in it was, they decided to change the uniform for some different trousers. The ones that I had were like cargo style. They changed them for just normal trousers, a thinner polo shirt, no fleece, and a non-waterproof coat without a hood. Now, bearing in mind you work outside in all conditions and they give you a non-waterproof uniform and you had to wear it. I never did because I refused. I stuck with the old one, being bloody minded, and basically they didn't pay me enough to get piss wet through. I mean, you got piss wet through anyway, to be fair, because you had to spend a lot of time lying down on the floor and you got given nothing to lie on in those situations where you did have to do that. So you would have basically, your top would be like you had your coat, but your trousers, you would spend the rest of the day in soaking wet trousers. So yeah, fantastic. Now I started, and because of COVID, I didn't have my full training. I was basically sent live to start work, but that was fine. I was capable. It's not a problem. When I finally did go to do one of my trainings that I completed, it was excuse me. One of the practical courses. It was months after I'd been there, and they sent me to a different thing where you go and you meet one of the trainers. And one of the things they tell you is, you have to look around the car and you have to get your hands all over it, and your hands, and this is an actual saying, your hands should be black from the dirt off the car, as you've inspected it. Now, that's fine, apart from that in most places you don't have anywhere to wash your hands. But we'll come back to that later. And the other thing as well is, if you are looking, I mean, you would get awkward customers who wouldn't want you to touch their car at all, but they were few and far between. And don't get me wrong, there was lots of good customers. You get in any retail environment, you get the odd one. But anyway, that's not really what we're here to talk about, the customers. If you want one about customers, then we can do a separate one. But anyway, and the thing is, if you've got a car and it is, say, somewhat dirty, you might have to, I mean, I used to use a soft cloth because you have to be careful because you can cause damage to the paintwork if you're taking grid across it. So you do have to be careful. But at the same time, to say that your hands need to be black is just, otherwise you're not doing your job properly, is ludicrous. So yeah. Now, this particular company had a lot of locations up and down the country, still do. One or two offices. The one I started in was an office, so that was quite nice because I had luxuries like a toilet, sink, a fridge, microwave, things like that. A little place where I could actually deal with food separate away from the desks and things. But most of them are these little shed things, like horse cabins, basically. Most of them were not cleaned very well by staff, and that's the staff's fault. But then again, a lot of the time, the stuff to keep them clean also wasn't there. But again, we'll touch on some more on that as well. I mean, most of the pods, in fact, all of the pods, pretty much, all but one pod that I went in, it had no fridge, nowhere to heat food, so no microwave, nowhere to store food, nowhere to, if you need to bought some stuff for you to make food, nowhere to make food. You would have a long counter, but people would come and there'd be bags of car packs and all sorts of things on it. There was just basically nowhere to have food, and no sinks, nowhere to wash your hands, and no toilet. Now, some of the locations were sort of by things like supermarkets, so you could use the supermarket toilets, but again, if you've ever been those, they're not great. Others, there was literally nothing. There was one that I went to, and the only basically toilet that was really close by that you could use was in a Subway, so you had to go and ask if they would let you use the loo, and if they said no, then you were screwed basically, or you would have to drive to find out the public toilet or a supermarket. It's bewildering. There was one pod where I worked where the pod did actually have a portal on the outside of it, but it was pretty disgusting. I mean, it was vile. It was actually vile. And when I actually complained about it and said, can we not get someone to come and service it and clean it? Because when I used to go to offices and things, because I travelled to quite a few, I would clean them because I refused to sit in squalor, so I would clean them. I actually ended up making sure I had stuff in my boot that I could go, if I went into a branch, I could clean it if that branch didn't have the stuff in there to clean it or people hadn't done it. So I would make sure that it was clean. And I complained about this, Lou, and I said, can we not? And I was told by the regional manager, I can't complain about it, because if I complain about it, they'll just take it out and you'll have to drive to Asda. Wow. Nothing like looking after your staff, is there? So that, I mean, oh dear. Then they started bringing in, to being environmentally friendly, solar powered pods. And then they brought in really tiny pods, which a lot of the new, well, I think most of the new ones are. In fact, let me show you. Here's a photo of one now. So that's what you basically had to work in, which gives you even less space for things like food. Well, basically you have no way of making, of keeping like your personal stuff or food and things like that separate from. It's just not workable. It's not workable. And the trouble with the solar powered pods was, as the darker nights were in, they didn't hold enough power basically. So you could have light or you could have heating, and only for half the day, which is insane. The other thing with the solar power pods is they didn't have any plug sockets in, or if they did have plug sockets in, they were turned off. So you couldn't actually plug anything in. You had a USB port where you could plug in your tablet for that to charge that you were given by the company, and that was it. So basically, you had no way of making a drink, even if you could take a kettle, you couldn't make a drink. There was no way of making hot drinks. Some of them did have water fountains in them. They didn't always have water in them, but there was a water fountain there. And again, because the pods couldn't run them, most of them didn't work. So if there was water, it was going to be warm, but you couldn't get hot water and you couldn't get cold water. It was just whatever the temperature of the pod was. It was just, yeah. How they managed to get away with it, I don't know. I really don't. A number of the pods, especially new pods, no fire suppression equipment at all. No fire extinguishers, fire blankets, nothing like that. So safety first. So yeah, and like I say, I mean, you could go to a pod in the morning when it was like during winter, it would be frozen on the inside, and you would get maybe 30 minutes of heating, because that's all the button that you could press would allow you, and then you'd have light for maybe 4 hours, and that would be it. You'd be done. Not good. And in fact, because I mean, there was some terrible stuff, and there was some good stuff, and there was some stuff that I liked and I got on well with. And there was one young lad that joined. He was 19, I think. And the first time I worked with him, we were having a conversation about the pods and the solar powers and all that sort of stuff. And he was remarking that, or was it the second time I worked with him? Or I'd been in there, I think. Because he was moaning at me because he thought I'd used all the power, and I was like, there's not really any power to use. But he had basically been told by another manager, because he basically, the power had gone out, it was in darkness, he still got appointments booked in, and the thing was and the pod was in pitch black in the middle of a car park. And they told him, it was raining as well, that he had to stand outside in the dark, in the rain, with the handheld floodlight they gave you, so people knew they were there. I told him never, ever, ever do that again. I said, if anyone asks you why you've not done it, I said, send them to me and I will tell them to go do one. Because that's not acceptable. And it's not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. It's disgusting that someone was told that. It really annoyed me at the time. But I didn't kick up a fuss because I needed the job. So yeah, so that's that. Again, especially with obviously a lot of the solar panel pods, when it came to summer, you had the opposite problem. There was nowhere to plug fans in, there was nowhere to keep cold. There may not be cold water. What you were told was, if you've got cars on site that have air conditioning, go and run a car, sit in the car, put the air conditioning on, and that was basically what was deemed to be acceptable. The trouble is, a lot of the time, especially if you're in a quiet branch, or you're in a branch where pickup was quite quick, you might not have a car on site to sit in. So again, care for your workforce. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Covered that one. And as I think I sort of alluded to it already, new branches, I mean, there was a number of new branches that I went and worked in, and you would go to the branch, it had only just opened, and it would basically have none of the things required. It would have no bin in it, no staplers in it, no paperwork packs in it, no cleaning equipment in it, so you couldn't clean the surfaces, and you're inspecting cars, so sometimes you have to clean things off like VIN numbers. There'd be nothing to do that, nothing to clean, nothing to wipe down VIN numbers, nothing to, none of the things you need to do the job and to do it to keep you safe, keep your customers safe, and especially as some of this was during COVID times as well, or coming out of COVID times or in between COVID times, You know, there'd be no hand sanitizer. I can remember I went to one branch, there was absolutely nothing in it. I had to go to TK Maxx, buy a small bottle of hand sanitizer. I had to go and buy wipes. There was no toilet. The only toilet there was at Costa. And although the first time I bought a coffee, the second time I went in and I just said, look, I'm really sorry, but do you mind if I use the loo? And they very nicely let me. But you know, it's I mean, what does that say about you as a company that you don't give your employees a toilet? It's disgusting. Most of these pods had those big metal shutters that you pull down. Some of the older pods didn't have the things in them that stop the shutter going all the way up, so you would have to stand on the door ledge, reach up, pull it down, which not exactly health and safety. And other ones which were brand new did have those things, but again, because they were on stilts, there's supposed to be a step there that you can stand on the step to get into the doorway. Half of them, the steps were missing, weren't delivered, or hadn't been ordered, I don't know what, but there was no steps. So as you can see, health and safety, real priority. Now somehow they managed to stay open for most of the time during COVID because they decided they deemed themselves as click and collect. Now, how they managed to do this, I don't know, because yes, the people, they come, they drop the car off, you have a look around it, but you know, it's pouring down with rain. People don't want to stand outside and do paperwork. And you know, there are times when you know you are going to have to move that person's car. You don't know what they've had or what if they've got COVID, if haven't got COVID or anything, you know. And eventually they did deliver some packs to stores, but it took a while. So they gave you seat covers and hand sanitizer and face masks, but and antibacterial wipes, but you know, at the same time, it wasn't click and collect. So how do we really were allowed to stay open? I don't know. But I mean, the one thing I would say about that is sort of COVID first really sort of kicked off in I think it was in the October when I started there. So was it? I think it was the second round of COVID. The first round of COVID, I was working somewhere else. The second round of COVID, this is where I just started working. I mean, we had 9 parking spaces, and it was very busy because they were the only people buying cars. The prices were not great, but they were okay. In hindsight, dealers should have been buying those cars because it's what kind of led to a shortage. The fact that those dealers weren't taking those cars back, but that's a whole different story. We're getting off topic now. I apologise, this is quite a long video as well. But I had 9 parking spaces, and every day I would have 22, 24, 25 cars on site, you know, and you could have, I think it was 20 appointments in a day. I routinely had 25 because you would have people that just turned up as well. So you'd be fully booked, you'd have walk-ins, you were supposed to finish at, I think it was 7, and I would be there always from 7 till maybe even sometimes, definitely 8, sometimes even 9, trying to get stuff done, trying to get photos done, paperwork done, and you didn't get paid for that time. It was just expected that you would stay. It was in your contract that if you hadn't finished everything you needed to finish by 7 o'clock, then you stayed till it was finished for free. And I did that for weeks and weeks, unpaid. One of the other things they really pushed is bonuses. Everything was about bonus. Everything, every email, every conversation, bonus, 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 get bonus, get bonus, get bonus, get bonus, get bonus. All you ever heard. The thing about it is when I first started, the bonus system, the way it was set up, was quite good. Lots of people hit it. But the trouble is, when lots of people hit the bonus, what they tended to do was then change the format, which they did not long after I'd been there. And lots of people for quite a while struggled to hit that bonus, and of course then you get criticised because if you're not getting bonus, then the regional manager and the divisional manager aren't getting their bonus necessarily. And you know what they say about shit, it rolls downhill. But everything was about pushing, underhanded tactics and all sorts. Pressure. We'll come to that in a minute anyway. But everything, was massive focus on bonus, and I mean the pay wasn't great, to be fair. You did really need the bonus, but like just as like lots of people, myself included, started hitting that new bonus, that the change bonus, which changed for the better to make it easier. Apparently, started hitting it. Can you guess what they did? They changed it again to make it slightly harder to get. But it was always sold that it was in your interest, the reason they're changing this, even though the bonus bill dropped. Go figure. Now, during my time working for this organisation, I did quite a bit of overtime, and that was fine because you got paid £100 a day for overtime, or at least you were supposed to get paid £100 a day for overtime. I actually wasn't paid for over £450 worth of overtime, which I never saw. And well, when I left, I could have. Because of how certain things were done, it was difficult for me to prove half of it. The other half I could absolutely prove. But I just wanted to get out of the place. So I just left and wrote it off, basically. Well, mistakes, I could really do with it now. But there we go. Right. Yeah, and they would do strange... Because basically, if you weren't one of the golden boys, which, to be fair, I was for quite a while, especially if you did something wrong, you would be not, they weren't interested. And I remember one occasion, I was working in a branch. I was supposed to be working in a branch with somebody else, so we got two people's worth of appointments, and that second person had not shown up. It turned out they, for whatever reason, hadn't got the stuff they needed to come in and work that day, but they still insisted that he came down anyway. So he just basically sat there in the office doing nothing, while I still ended up doing both sets of appointments. And it's like, what is the point in, it just strange things. There was certainly a lack of support and understanding, I think, within the organisation, especially for certain people. I mean, I did a fair bit of mentoring and helping out of people that had gone through the training and didn't know things. Basic things that they should have known. And I'm like, do you not know how to look at this report? Do you not know how this report works with this report? Do you not know that if you do this, you can do this, and it makes this easier? And they just didn't know simple and basic things. Yet they spent 3 weeks training with somebody. And you're like, how can you not know these things? What are these people doing? And it was just bewildering. It really was bewildering. One of the other things is that you used to get a lot is there was a lot of belittling and public humiliation on conference calls and on emails. A lot from the divisional manager, who would routinely, if he came on, if there's been performance issues or whatever issues, he would come on and he would single people out on a conference call and just tear them down while everyone else was listening. And you would get emails along the same lines. Look, these people haven't done very well this week. These people need to step it back up. These people have done well. These people are all terrible. I want an explanation of why. These are things that should be done in private. They're not things that should be done in public. And to that end, bonus lists were always sent out in public with everybody's name and exactly what they'd earned. That's confidential information. What you earn is confidential information. It shouldn't be shared with anybody else. But these were routinely sent out on emails, a list of all the names of the people in the area and what their bonuses were, which is not right. And it got to a stage where it kind of got to a bit of silly season, because people would phone up to cancel, and we were told, because they didn't like people cancelling, that we couldn't cancel their appointments. Now, whether or not people were doing the wrong thing in some places, rather than just dealing with those people, if that was happening, they just basically stopped people cancelling their appointments. So someone would phone up and say, can I cancel my appointment? And you would go, yes, you can cancel your appointment, but I can't cancel it for you. Even though you could cancel it for them, you'd have to then say, you'll have to go onto the system and then cancel it. Which, of course, they never did, because they don't want to do that. They've taken the time out of the day to phone you up to tell you, I'm not coming. But the other thing as well is all these cancellations and people that just didn't turn up for their appointments, they all went against you. It was a black mark against you. So basically, if you had 10 people that had booked to come and see you, you had to buy 50% of that, regardless of whether they showed up or not. It wasn't just 50% of those that turned up, it was 50% of everything. So even those people that didn't turn up, those people that you tried to call to say, are you coming? And they would say no, you would still have to, yeah, it was just bewildering. Very, very strange. Oh dear. But yeah, it was just a very toxic place to work. Very toxic place to work. So yeah, it was just a very strange. There would often be rota changes throughout the week. They'd change it. Sometimes it was because people were genuinely off, and obviously that can't be helped. But sometimes they would just decide they want to change things last minute, or put somebody in a different branch if they've had a couple of bad days. Oh well, we're going to change it. But if you wanted time off at short notice, oh no, can't do that. Got to give us at least a month's notice. However, they can change yours at a day's notice, and yeah. Now the other thing as well is because you didn't have. I mean, I did for quite a while. Again, COVID kind of helps with this. Have a permanent branch. Excuse me, and that wasn't too bad. But generally, people moved around, and you could be in Derby one day, Nottingham the next, Doncaster the next, and you would have to get the keys and drop the keys off of each branch. But you don't get to do that in company time. You have to do that on your own time. So you finish work, and then you have to go and give person X the keys for that branch, and then perhaps even have to go off to another branch and collect the keys for that for the next day. And all that was on your own time. And that could take you another 30, 40 minutes. It's, yeah. So, these are just some of the highlights. They used to do these spreadsheets every so often to get customer demographics. Now, they should already have that information anyway from whatever people have filled out. But what they used to get you to do is, customer comes in, you buy the car, and then after they've gone, you would have a spreadsheet that would put their name, their age, their sex, and then that would be emailed over, and they would collate all this information, and it would just be sent over to you on email, which again is, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to really do that sort of stuff, but anyway, I could be wrong on that one, I'm not sure. I mean, again, when I took the job, I knew I didn't really want the job. I had an idea it was going to be a terrible job, and I was correct. But you were there, your job was to buy cars, but then what they don't tell you is that that's not really your job. Your job is to sit and make phone calls all day. Now, when it was busy during COVID time, it didn't really matter, but as things slowed right down, sort of 2022, yeah. They had basically a list of people that had, basically you would get a list on your screen of people, and these would be people that have either booked an appointment and not turned up, come in and not sold their car, or have just basically got a quote off the website, and you had to phone them up and say, oh, that offer we made you that you laughed in our face and said you didn't want, well, we're just phoning up to see if you've changed your mind, which of course they hadn't. I mean, in all the time that I was there and all the phone calls I made, I only ever had one person say, actually, I'll come in, I've got a quote. And do you know what they did? Never turned up. But it got kind of to crazy town, because it got to a point where they were saying, well, we want you to do all of your paperwork, do all of your customers, and make 60 phone calls a day. It just wasn't possible. It was just, yeah. It just wasn't possible. Anyway, whenever you would buy a car, it would basically go into a grade. Now, the grade basically says how good it is, 1 to 5. 1 being it's pristine, hardly any marks on it. 2, few marks. 3, better than average, but few marks. 4 is sort of your average, harder wearing, quite a few marks. And then 5 is got rust, holes and all sorts on it. Now, what we used to do is all the cars that you bought, they went off to auction, because the company that owned this company also happened to own an auction house. So they were just basically sent to auction. They didn't do any repairs or anything, they just literally shipped them to auction. Now, what you had to do is match your grade to the auction house's grade. Now, depending on which auction house it went to would be dependent on how hard you would have to grade that car. Where I live in, if I was at a branch in this area and I knew that the car was going to the auction house that's closer to me, I know that they're fairly fair, fairly reasonable, and you can be pretty much there. If you were in, say, Nottingham, they were much, much worse at grading. And the other thing that they used to do is, not only did they not always grade cars, they sometimes wouldn't actually inspect them. They would just go off photos. So basically, they would just say, it's this old, it's this grade, basically. They would also... I can remember buying two vans once. One was a Peugeot, one was a Mercedes. Now, the Peugeot was far, far better. And they graded them the other way around. But the only reason they did that is because that one was a Mercedes. If it had a better badge on it, they'd always grade it higher. And you had to learn these little quirks and things that they would do to know where you were going to stand, to try and hit basically that grading match to get bonuses and things. But if you know this particular auction house, you'll know they're not exactly the greatest in the world either. Funny that. See a pattern emerging here. Now this is where we kind of go into where it sort of crosses over to talking to customers and things as well. Because those condition costs, basically we were told you would go around and basically for a certain grade you had to have this many things on it. For grade 1 it's like just 1 minor. Grade 2 it's 2 minors, maybe 3 minors, or 1 medium, and so on and so forth. And these costs, what we would charge for them, or what we would deduct off the price of the vehicle, would be a set figure. But those figures would change dramatically all the time. If they weren't having, if they found that as the condition costs went up, people stopped selling their cars, then those condition prices would come back down again, and then slowly rise back up again. But what they also used to do is have what they called condition sales weekends. If they wanted to have a big weekend where they would slash the price of the conditions, the condition cost. So what was on Thursday £500 might only be £300 over the weekend. But the problem with that as well is if somebody came in on, say, a Sunday and you gave them a price, and then they came back on a Monday, they'd have a completely different price because that condition cost had gone back up. And you would have to say, oh, well, it's because of the extra mileage you've done. It's insanity, isn't it? Absolute insanity. But yeah. So those condition costs will change all the time. And as someone who's worked in the car industry before, I can tell you they don't change that dramatically in those amount of times. It just doesn't happen. A key is not going to be £50 one day and £300 the next day. It doesn't happen. And don't get me started on the price of the... Anyway, let's move on. You would have communications that would come through from head office that would be like, these are things you're not allowed to do. And then you would be directed by the managers above you to do exactly that. One of the key ones is if they were having a bad day is you don't let a customer leave and not sell the car until you phoned the regional or divisional manager, and you would have to phone them and say, I've got this person, this is what they've said, this is what I've said, this is what they said. They will say, well, say this to them, I've already said that to them. Or say it again. Or remind them that, this price might change. And it was all about putting pressure on. I mean, I didn't agree with it, so I didn't put pressure on people. I was just basically honest. Look, I would just say, this is what I can do. It's up to you, basically. Because I don't believe in pressure sales. One, it doesn't work, and two, it's morally wrong. And the one time I did try, I only had a nervous breakdown. No, it's wrong. It's just wrong, and it just gives you bad rep. It's a terrible thing to do as an organisation. I've been at the end of it, and there are places I won't shop at because of that type of thing. But yeah, so you would be told basically, it would come up in the morning questions, which one of these practices are you not allowed to do, and that would be one of them. And then you would basically be told, no one leaves that site until you've called us to say, so you can make out you're going that extra mile and doing something special for them. People aren't stupid. They're not stupid. If you treat them like they're stupid, then, well, more for you. Right. I keep looking at it because I made notes because I wanted to make sure I got everything in. This is going to be a really long video, so I'm very, very sorry. Yes. One of the things that this particular organisation advertises is the speed at which you can get a quote from them. Now, the trouble is, one, you can't actually do it in the time that they say that you can do it. And two, if you want an accurate quote, then you definitely can't. Because basically what you do when you get your quote is you put your details in and it gives you a price. But that price is not an accurate price. That is basically a best case scenario price, which is 90% of the time, 95% of the time, never going to be the price you're going to get. Mainly because it doesn't take into account any condition. It doesn't matter how old your car is, it will grade it as it is perfect. So your car can be 20 years old and it's still going to grade it as if it hasn't got a mark on it. So then, of course, you come down, it gets inspected and we rip it to pieces and say it's got this on, it's got this on, it's got that on, it's got that on. And you go, yeah, but it's a 10-year-old car. Surely it takes that into account. No, it doesn't. There's a tiny little box with 98% of people, I would say, miss, that you can click and it gives you a drop down menu and you can select all the things that are wrong with your car. And even then, most people would miss things because, people don't necessarily know how to look for things. And then that gives you a much more accurate price, but that takes time, so you're not going to get it done in the time that they tell you you can. So it's a lie, basically. It's a blatant lie, and they're allowed to get away with it. I don't know how they get away with it, because it is basically a blatant lie. Then there is what we call the low value cars. So basically anything that's like £1,000 or under. When they came in, basically I always used to try and grade them as I would grade any other car. But as things change with the auction house and things change with the bonuses, basically the only way that you could hit your target, if you had a lot of those kind of cars in, is to basically grade everything as a grade 5, regardless of its condition. And that means you would be getting less than half of your original value. You might be able to get it up to just about half. If you went sort of a grade higher, like a 4, or you would probably get about half the value. But you other than that, you that's what you're looking at. If the car's £1,000 or less, you're looking at 50% of what your original quote is. So yeah, if you got a car that came in at 600 quid, you knew you were going to offer 3, maybe 350 if you were lucky, max. You are often encouraged to use basically pressure tactics to get the cars. You would do, like, as I've already said, call the manager. You would, it's safer buying from us than if if you sell it privately. You're putting yourself at risk, and You're better off selling with no part exchange. You know, if you're buying another car, you're better off going without a part exchange, which actually isn't true at all, because at the end of the day, if you're buying a car, they want to sell you that car. So if you're willing to put the effort in, regardless of whether they want your car or not, or whether they're just going to bring your car through to the auctions like these guys did, if you work at it, you can get just as good a deal with or without a part exchange. And I know that for a fact because I've done it. You know, oh well, the price can change. You know, prices are always changing. That was always a key one. You know, price may not be the same tomorrow. And yeah, it was just bizarre things like that. We used to have this thing that we would basically call basically we would get a small leeway to play with, only small, and where we could put in a certain percentage of what we took off back on. It was a tiny margin, I think 10-15%, I think, if that. And then your regional manager could put another 5% on top of that. So again, you know, if people weren't happy with the price, but then why aren't those prices being offered in the first place? But then what they came up with was a secondary system after that, whereas after the customer had gone or said no even to that, sometimes if it was a car that they really wanted, that they knew they got people waiting for, the tablet would then give you a thing saying, what does the customer want for this car? And you could put that in and it would make another decision. And sometimes it would actually give you the price you wanted. Most of the time it wouldn't. But again, the thing is as well is you would be told not to use the one that you could use on cars that had certain faults on it, yet the tablet would still do it on cars with those faults. So I'm not even sure how that worked. I mean, there was just loads of contradictions and things like that. And I think for final one, I can remember being on a conference call where the divisional manager was giving us a lecture about certain things, and basically there was two things that he said that basically were not just unethical but wrong, really. And that is basically, he was saying that basically cars in the grading category should fall into this. If a car is this old, it's this category. If it's this old, it's this category. If it's this old, it's this category. If it's this old, it's this category. Regardless of what's on it, basically is what he was saying. So you could have a 20-year-old car with 5,000 miles on it that's been owned by some little old lady that's been to Sainsbury's and back once a week for the last 10 years. Is in immaculate condition, but you would still have to put that car down as a grade 4 or grade 5, even if it was in immaculate condition, because that's what they deemed it as. And the other brilliant one was, and this I really couldn't believe, is sometimes obviously, you know, accidents do happen, cars do get repaired, and sometimes those repairs aren't up to standard. Sometimes people have done them themselves, sometimes they've been done by a body shop. Now, most of the ones that have been done by a good body shop, you can't tell anyway. I mean, there are perhaps certain ways you can tell. I mean, they used to give us these paint pens, which nobody uses. They're terrible things. Nobody uses them. They're not very good at all. I mean, I never used mine ever. But basically, his take was that any car that's ever had a repair basically has to go down as having a poor repair done. Now, that's not right. But the point he made as well, because somebody called him out on it, he said, if you've got a car, so you've got a BMW, it's only 6 months old, it's had a bang, and somehow you've realised, or maybe you've told, or you've seen people or whatever, but basically you've got a BMW, it's 6 months old, it's had a little bang on the rear bumper, it's been back to BMW, it's been in the BMW body shop, it's been repaired with BMW paint and BMW parts, that is still a poor repair. shocking. Absolutely shocking. And one of the many reasons why I took a temporary contract somewhere else, which ended. I've been offered a new job now, but I'm just waiting to start. It's just taking a lot longer than I anticipated. But there we go. But anyway, that is irrelevant. But yes, this is my journey with a particular car buying company. I'll let you guess which one. Thanks for watching. Sorry it was so long. Catch you later.
Jet plane headed up to the sky, spread wings and the clouds getting